Welcome to Sex in the News. We are the Siegel Brothers. Tonight we'll be talking about teen girls likely getting unnecessary pelvic exams, fears of sex after a heart attack. A new study shows that resuming sex may be healthy, and conservatives in Washington state seek to overturn a sex ed bill because it teaches about consent.
Our first story for tonight is that many girls are getting unnecessary pelvic exams. When we look at the number of invasive pelvic exams that are given to adolescent girls between the ages of 15 and 20, most of them do not need them. They're done unnecessarily.
This is kind of mind-blowing because most sexuality educators are trained.
That's right.
By 21 or when a girl becomes sexually active. And this research is saying, no, unless there's a problem, pain, discharge, bleeding, or if a girl is pregnant. Even for birth control, how long was that a standard? You want birth control? Hop
exactly.
Up on the
you
table.
need to have an exam.
No, you don't.
But no.
You need to have a conversation.
Right, and that's really the key, and that's really according to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which most OBGYNs don't seem to know the rules of. Because back in 2012, they changed their guidelines for pelvic exams. And their overarching conclusion was that they are not recommended for women under the age of 21, except if there are symptoms, if there's bleeding, if there's pelvic pain, if there's pregnancy, then okay, you do a pelvic exam. But for the most part, they're totally unnecessary. In fact, this one study, which did come out earlier this year, was showing that just last year, out of 2.6 million adolescent girls who did receive a pelvic exam by their gynecologist, 1.6 million of them were unnecessary.
Wow.
Right? So that leaves the majority
That's
of
atrocious.
pelvic exams with adolescent girls to be completely unnecessary. It's not recommended until they're 21 or older. So we really have to, again, get this straight, and we need to get the medical community in line with the recommendations of their own professional boards.
Yeah, and just one final point on that story, as we discussed on this week's Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Yeah. People don't realize, providers don't realize, this is an invasive
Absolutely.
thing. Having someone get up on a table and throw their legs up in the most vulnerable position.
That's right.
I'm glad this is out, and hopefully these will stop being so automatic and routine.
Indeed.
Good news out of Israel. Of course, any guy who's had a heart attack, once he's recovered and has a 6-week checkup with his cardiologist, invariably will start to freak out and think about sex again. This new study says that resuming sex after a heart attack may actually boost survival rates.
Yep. And what I really liked about that study as well is that it showed a couple of interesting perspectives that go into this. Number one, having sex, and we've talked about this for a long time, we know is good for you. It's a healthy thing. But this is also something earlier, the earlier a guy can resume sexual activity after a heart attack, it's both contributing to his health and also a reflection of his health.
Right.
Because when we look at that sense of well-being, we look at the personal sense of health somebody has to feel to begin resuming sexual activity, that's also a great contributor into their physical health and recovery.
Right.
And I think this study also goes on to show that even in non-cardiac conditions,
like cancer.
Like cancer, exactly, sexual activity is a wonderful way to reduce risks and reoccurrence of a lot of these illnesses.
Yeah.
So we can't say this enough, that sex is good and it's good for you.
And therapeutic. And unfortunately, in this line of work, we can't avoid outrage on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Conservatives in Washington, led primarily by Catholic activists,
The state of Washington.
are seeking to overturn a sex ed bill. with a statewide referendum for the ballot this November.
Yeah.
Because, this is insanity, because like
for
any sane, healthy sexuality education program for adolescents and young adults, it is state policy to teach about consent.
Yeah.
And these conservatives, one of these dusty old fears and arguments,
Bolstered by the Catholic diocese.
is that if you're talking about, let me quote directly, when you get into the issues of how do you say yes or how do you say no, that can easily open the door to it's okay to say yes and no, and steps on our teaching that sexual activity is to be reserved for the sacrament of marriage.
Right. And this is also kind of historic from the standpoint of this group of Republicans who were, by the way, they lost their bid to try to be elected into office. So they found this as a way of getting in, who, along with the Catholic diocese in Washington, has actually made this a referendum. They managed to get
raised,
this
over $1 million.
and they got enough signatures to put this on a ballot. So now this is not being decided on by school districts. This is not being decided on by educators. This is being decided on by voters in Washington.
Well, hopefully,
And that's unprecedented.
Washingtonians will live up to their liberal reputation and will knock this down.
Right.
As
And
it should be.
let me throw in, it's less about being liberal than it is about being smart.
Really.
We want to pay honor in our way to people who deserve our attention, if not ire, in the piece we like to call Poetic Justice. And today's winner of our Poetic Justice shout out is Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. And why does he deserve this honor?
Well, remember all that stuff he said about 4 years ago about Supreme Court justices, and you can hold me to my word and save the tape, and if the situation were reversed, he would feel the same way about it.
Right.
Lo and behold, what a shock. He
That's
has
right.
no soul to care about.
Nope. So he is now pushing through and wanting to really expedite this truly horrible choice for replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. And now his words are coming back to bite him. And I have to
But
say,
he doesn't care.
but not only does, well, he has
Well,
to care
yeah,
now.
He was on Fox whining that he's out
That's
of money.
right. That's right. And
That's
here's the poetic justice.
There's the justice.
Exactly.
Good.
So he said he didn't care. We hold his feet to the fire. We are now holding his feet to the fire, and he is now in tears on Fox News complaining about he can't raise any money and hopefully will lose this election in November.
Oh, hopefully,
so
please.
our thoughts go out to you, Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, choke on it. And that's it for this week's Sex in the News. We are
Indeed.
the Siegel Brothers.
Thanks for joining us.